We are live. I'd like to welcome everyone to another episode of Heart to Heart with Bree. Tonight, Andrew is back co-hosting. Andrew, would you please introduce yourself to the viewers?
Sure. Again, my name is Andrew Green, and for those who don't know, Bree and I are actually related. We're cousins, and we actually went to school together, so we
Yes.
have a lot of history. And we both just love the Lord and have a passion for discussing the Bible and sharing what we know with others.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to us covering this topic tonight. It's
Right.
been my desire for this year
Hmm.
to do more real life topics, things that
Sure.
people go through, but with us, we can look at it through a spiritual eye and a
Right.
spiritual understanding. And what I'm
Right.
hoping is that we will help others to feel hopeful and to be
Yeah.
uplifted. And,
Right.
this is a judgment free zone.
Right.
And, we encourage anyone that, if you ever feel like reaching out to Andrew or I, please feel free to do so. We're here
Mhm.
to offer support.
Right.
And, we would just like to, like I said, just, we both spend a lot of time in the Word and it has really helped our lives. And we're hoping
Mhm.
the same for others.
Amen.
So,
Amen.
Andrew, tonight we're talking about emotional eating,
Emotional eating. Yeah. Yeah.
otherwise known as stress eating, also known as
Right.
stress eating. Um,
Mhm.
what is emotional eating?
What is emotional eating or stress eating? I would just sort of just put it in a nice way. I would say it's when an individual um eats in response to uh, some emotion that they are experiencing. Um, that's what I would say. So, and they're eating in response to the emotion and not to any feelings of hunger, but simply to use food as a way of like a band-aid or a medicine.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I like how you put that. I'd like to remind the viewers, feel free to post your questions and
Mhm.
comments. You
Yeah.
know, for years when I was married,
Hmm.
I didn't realize it until when we went our separate ways.
Uh-huh.
But I was an emotional eater.
Mm.
Now, a
Hmm.
lot of what I ate was candy, drank a
Hmm.
lot of soda,
Right.
and it
Right.
was a coping mechanism. I didn't realize it at the time.
Hmm.
I made the connection after he left that I went
Mm.
cold turkey. I went cold turkey. I didn't drink any soda.
Hmm.
I didn't eat any candy, no
Hmm.
cake. All the things I was eating every day.
Hmm.
For months, I didn't eat any of those things. It was like the desire was no longer there.
Uh-huh.
So I learned then that because I was really stressed out when I was married.
Right.
And I realized then I made the connection, oh my God,
Mm.
emotional eater. And it
Hmm.
was that band-aid, it was that comfort. And
Hmm.
after a while, it wasn't even so much about liking these things that I was eating,
Right.
but it
Right.
just became a habit. So
Right.
it,
Yeah.
it became a habit, and I just associated it,
Hmm.
especially with my evening ritual,
Hmm.
before going to bed. But it
Right.
was like I was really depressed,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
I like I said, it was a band-aid. It didn't help me,
Hmm.
but I felt that it was helping me,
So,
you know?
Bree, if you don't mind, if you could just probably just think back, if you could,
Yes.
I don't know if you could or you can't, but uh, do you remember that particular day and probably what was happening when that light bulb came on? Um, yeah,
Yeah, I honestly do. I
okay, go
remember
ahead.
I
Yeah.
remember,
Do you mind sharing?
like, because remember, I told this was a habit for years, drinking
Mm-hmm,
soda, eating the candy, cookies,
mm-hmm,
cake, whatever it was, especially at bedtime. And
mm-hmm,
all of a sudden I noticed I wasn't doing it anymore.
mm-hmm,
But not only was I that it's not only that I wasn't doing it, I didn't have the desire to do it. That's
mm-hmm,
what shocked me. And then
mm-hmm,
I made, because I had to ask myself, what has changed? And then I
mm-hmm.
realized he's not here anymore. That's
Ah,
when I made
okay.
the connection. I made the connection. My God,
Mm-hmm,
that's how stressed out I was. And I'm telling you,
mm-hmm,
I went for
mm-hmm,
months without eating any of these things. And I honestly didn't struggle during that time. And I can tell you for that, it was about 3 months before
right.
I touched any of those things again. But
Mm-hmm.
that's when I made the association of
Okay,
being
okay.
a stress eater. Have you ever had any experience with emotional eating or stress eating?
You know, I I was trying to think of something, emotional eating. Okay. So, um, I can say I don't know if it was emotional. No, um, I think it was more related to the medication that I was taking at the time.
Okay. Okay.
So, so the first time that I got sick, um, this was possible. This was around somewhere around 1994, 95, um, when I got sick, and it probably like a year later. It took about a year to get fully diagnosed, and then when I got on the treatment, which was one of the uh, the medications was this steroid,
Okay.
um, prednisone, and um, it just turned on something in my brain. I just wanted to eat, and I was never the person that would just eat. I called myself where I just ate to survive. You know, I prefer drinking. Like I would have a lot of sodas and
Yeah.
juice and whatever the case is. I never had a problem with that. But eating was just okay. Well, I ate because it was I just needed to eat. So I wasn't really a big eater, but during that time when I was on that particular medication, Bree, I would wake up in the night and go into the kitchen, and I would just, it doesn't matter what it was. I mean, if there was like roast beef and strawberry jam, I would put them together. It didn't matter. It didn't matter what the combination was. I just had to have sweet with some salt, with yeah, with something crunchy. It didn't matter at all. I just ate, and I put on so much weight. It was unbelievable. I was always, medium frame, but no. I actually bought a pants that where the waist was waist 40.
Wow. I
Yeah.
can't picture you wearing a 40 waist.
Yes.
I
I
can't,
can't imagine
I
myself.
can't, I can't
Yes.
imagine that. I'd like to welcome our
Yeah.
dear friend Mikey Go. Thank you so much for tuning in, Mikey.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So yeah.
we can't change bad habits unless we acknowledge them. Let's
Mhm.
talk about coming to the realization that it's time for a change.
Right. Yeah. And just piggybacking on what you were saying, in the sense that you realize that that in this case, eating, that you had a problem with stress eating, emotional eating, um, but so, but in your case, because your husband left, that problem went away for that 3 months, and that's in that time
Well,
frame.
it was about 3 months before I started,
Right.
but it was like a sense of relief. But you said something that I could relate to. Like, I wasn't big on eating food. I would drink
Mhm.
soda, but
Right.
my thing it was always like cake, cookies, candy. That was
Right.
like
Yeah.
something
Yes. I love
to say
pastries, man.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. But so if someone that is that who is currently experiencing emotional eating and stress eating, um, you know, I would possibly say that to sort of do some inventory on yourself, like what's taking place in and around those times I find myself eating. Journaling those experiences, because then over time you could possibly see some pattern where you're eating not in a response to hunger, but you're
right.
eating in response to blank. Is it shame? Is it guilt? Is it loneliness? So as you're journaling, hopefully some of those emotions will be highlighted, um, and then once you can identify that, then you can take that next step in figuring out now how to mitigate the problem, right?
Yes.
But I think the first step is acknowledging that there is a problem, and then do some investigation. Uh, and if you can't do that on your own, definitely get some professional help to assist you in you know get counseling to really
Yeah, I
address
think
it.
I think journaling would be a good process to
Yeah,
go through because it
yeah,
can help you to look back. When am
yeah,
I eating?
exactly.
Am I eating when I'm stressed out? Am I eating when I'm angry? Am I eating when
Right,
I'm lonely? So
right.
yeah, I do think that would be a good thing to do. So, what I'm learning is that,
Mhm.
we see people who are considered to be obese,
Right,
and it may not necessarily be from because people just assume, oh, this person is greedy. It may not
right,
have
right.
anything to do with greed. This person could be suffering
Suffering, right.
emotionally, going
Mhm.
through life's issues, and that coping mechanism may have been there since
Right,
childhood, where
right.
they learned to eat to
Mhm.
deal with their stress.
Right. Or their weight is a result of medication sickness, like
Right,
in my
because
case, right?
medication, exactly,
Because it
because
happened. It happened.
when my son would have to take steroids sometimes, one of the things I remember his face just being all puffy, you know,
Right, right,
right?
right. You get that round face.
Yes,
You you tend to hold a lot of but water weight.
yes,
You're right.
yes,
Yes. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So people go through different things and people
Hmm.
can be, suffering inside. And,
Hmm.
I want to
Hmm.
talk about unkind and insensitive words.
Right.
They
Yeah.
do not motivate, they do not encourage. So let's talk
It,
about the
mm,
using of our words to uplift and encourage. And I bring this point up. I a few years ago, I went down to a size 2. Now,
hmm.
I have to admit during that time I really did not eat very much.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
not only that, I was working out a lot. I was running like 2.5 hours. I was, using weights. So I was
Right.
in great shape.
Hmm.
Now I, went back to some of my old ways, doing
Hmm.
COVID
Right.
and, life's changes. I
Hmm.
did gain, some weight. Now,
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
will not define myself by my weight, you
Uh,
know,
that's the
whether
secret right
I'm
there.
thin or whether I'm overweight, I'm still a human being.
Exactly.
Now, someone, but listen, I'm 61 years old. I know when you're giving me a compliment, and I
Right.
know when you're or if you're trying to insult me. This
Right.
person was insulting me but
Right.
doing it in a way like they were giving me a compliment.
Right.
And I
Right.
remember laughing to myself because I'm saying, you have to be very insecure to
Right.
even go there. But
Right.
I feel so good about myself right now. I'm not
Mhm.
going to stoop to your level because
Mhm.
guess what? I can come back and insult you. I'm saying this in my mind. I could come
Right.
back
Yeah.
and insult you with no problem, but then
Right.
I'll be no better than you. So
Right.
I
Right. Right.
decided to let it go. So
Mhm.
now what's your take on the unkindness?
Oh,
It's so unnecessary.
yeah.
Let's talk about because what is it? The power of the tongue. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah. We live in a very uh, crude and cold society.
Yes.
Technology has made us so isolated, really. So people feel very comfortable saying mean and vicious things behind the screen. And what tends to happen is that tends to filter into even their everyday life
Yes.
when they're among people. That there's no distinction. Um, they just say what's on their mind, and they think that some people have this thing that um, they are they are telling the truth, and
Or like I'm
someone
speaking
telling
my
the
mind.
truth
I'm speaking my
is
mind. I'm
I'm
speaking my
speaking my
mind.
mind.
Yeah.
Right, you're right. And there's no principle in the Bible that promotes speaking your mind. No. And there's no Bible text. So I'm not quite sure. That's just one of those lies, many lies,
Yes.
that we just accept from the devil, and think that it is truth. No, we're told to be kind. We're told to be our brother's keeper. Um, so yeah, it's there's nothing good about um, telling somebody, identifying and pointing out the obvious to the person that they're overweight. Um, you know, if you want to be supportive, um, be supportive by asking the person, if they want to share what's going on. Let them know that you're there for them, that you are willing to assist them in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Let them know that you love them, because
Yes.
and at the end of the day, we all want to be loved, and what's
Exactly.
eating at that person, that's causing that person to be overeaten, um, is probably the fact that they don't feel loved, they don't feel that they belong. So that's why they're probably overeating. So you being mean is just making their problem worse.
Exactly. Exactly. I can think of two times where,
Mm.
you know, and anyone that knows me, they know I have a sweet tooth and I just have a thing
Mm.
about candy. And that's one of the things I'm really trying to stop now. But I
Yeah.
remember I would take a box of Mike and Ike's to work every single day and I would have it on my desk. And I'm not gonna lie to you. I would hold the box up like in between what I was doing at work, and that's exactly what I would do. And I remember the manager came one day and he said, "I'm sick and tired of watching you killing yourself every day." And he grabbed the box from me and he threw it in the trash. And I remember feeling really embarrassed, like, "Oh my gosh!"
Uh,
And but I felt really bad, but I knew it was from a good place,
right.
And then one of the drivers came to me, but it was the way he said it.
Mhm,
He
mhm,
said, "Miss Bridget," he said, "I watch you eating that candy." And he said, "Miss Bridget, I don't like it. I don't like it.
mhm,
It's not good. It's not good." But
mhm,
I had to stop and think, I'm
mhm.
picking up this big box of Mike and Ike's. I'm just like,
Right.
it's like
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah.
I appreciated how both of them handled it,
Yeah. Yeah.
They weren't trying to hurt my feelings, but they were
Yeah.
pointing out
Yeah.
something that I really should not be doing, because it's not like I was doing this once or twice a week. I was doing it every single day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think there is a way to approach people, because guess what? If a person is overweight, they know it.
They
They
know it.
know it. They
Yeah.
don't need it to be pointed out to them. Like, I
Yeah.
know I could lose some weight. I could stand to lose some weight right
Yeah.
now. I don't need anyone to tell me that,
Right.
and
Yeah.
I don't need anyone to, with their snide comments or or someone just being petty,
Yeah.
at the end of the day. Because
Right.
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
when you try to
It's very
embarrass,
sensitive. They
right,
really think that you don't know that
you
you need to
know.
go and exercise.
You feel it. You
Yeah.
feel it. Like
Yeah.
when I move, I feel it. Like
Yeah.
when I was a size 2, I could definitely feel the difference. And now I prefer being smaller, because it's
Mhm.
so much easier to move around and just
Yeah.
to do things now.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, I think if you feel the need to be unkind to someone, then you
Mhm.
need to question your motives. You need to
Yeah.
have a talk with God.
Right.
Seriously. What's
Yeah.
your opinion on that?
Yeah. 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 I would just, suggest, like in everything, take that 5-second rule to pray. Um, Lord, uh, give me the words to say to my friend who is obviously hurting.
Yes.
How can I be a blessing to her, to him,
Yes.
right? Um, Without just going out there and just, um, inflicting more pain on this person. Um,
Exactly.
uh, you know, you could have been the right messenger, but you just didn't see God to get the right message, and you just ruined that relationship and that opportunity.
I like how you
But
said that.
but yes, and this happens inside church and outside of church.
Yes, it does.
It's just one of those things that that we just all encounter.
Yes.
Somebody's going to talk to you about how your kids are behaving. They're going to talk to you about how your spouse is behaving, how you look, how you dress. There, um, people have their problems, and instead of addressing their problems, they feel in order to elevate themselves, they need to stand on you and crush you,
Yes.
and that is so sad. That
That is
that
that is very sad. But
yeah.
I thank God, like, as I have grown on
Mm,
this journey,
mm,
understanding I don't have to stoop down to that person's level to try
right.
to throw an insult their way. I can do
Mhm,
that with my eyes closed. But,
right. Yeah.
I have decided to use my words for good,
Right.
instead of using my words to tear another person down, even if
Mhm,
they try to tear me down. But
right.
I just don't think it's worth it. But I do believe we could do so much with kind words.
Right. And Bree, just to sort of go sideways, a lateral movement. What happens sometimes is we even do it ourselves.
Yes, you're
In
right.
the sense that you who is overeating, who is suffering with this disease, um, you're fully aware, and there's this cycle. You feel the shame, the guilt, the anger, whatever that trigger is that is causing you to grab something that is sweet or salty or whatever it is, um, and you use that to get you through that immediate emotion that you're feeling, to pacify you, and instantaneously the devil brings it right back and make you feel worse about yourself, right? in in doing that same thing. So we punish ourselves, right? We we tell ourselves that we are not worthy, that we can't, that there's nothing better out there for us. So we stop trying. We don't try to exercise any type of self-esteem, motivation, or anything. We do this to ourselves. So we have to get the right tools to speak life to ourselves.
It's true.
Yeah.
That is definitely the truth. You as I was listening to you, I thought back to that show, what's it called? My 600-Pound Life. I don't know if you've ever seen that. But these are people who are trying to get what's it called? The surgery so that they can lose weight, the gastric bypass surgery.
Gastric bypass and so forth.
Right. And there was an episode with a lady that she was so big, she was bedridden. But the craziest thing was she was frying chicken from her bed. I will never forget that.
She brought like a burner.
She had what she needed in her room, and she was frying chicken. And I just remember, like, you know what? This is a person that really, really needs help. But she talked about, and it was basically the same thing, what food meant to them.
Yeah.
And the comfort it has. So for my next question, I want to talk about when food becomes a friend. These are words I've heard people say on this show, like basically like food has become a friend to them, or when food becomes entertainment.
Right.
It's filling a void, or it's comfort, or it's something that you're connecting with. Like you don't feel you're connecting with anything else. I can tell you that for me, over the past few years, I can see a trend that has developed in my life, especially in the evenings. It's just something about the nighttime.
Right. Yeah.
The time of the nighttime when sometimes your mind will go to dark places.
Right.
And food, because I was never one that really cared about eating much food. Like I said earlier, it was the soda, the candy, and all of that.
Yeah.
But now I've noticed that my relationship with food has changed. And I've noticed that, like before, I didn't even care if it was lunchtime, dinner time, whatever. When I would take lunch to work, my lunch would be like 6 crackers and a slice of cheese. And I was happy with that. People used to look at me like, how in the world do you survive? But that's all I wanted. Now my eating habits have changed. And I had to really do that self-evaluation to see what is it that has changed about my life.
Right.
What did my relationship with food change? And it was just life. And, making the association with the changes. There were things that I didn't necessarily like about the changes, but it's like instead of facing them head on, it was easy, let me grab this candy and and it's a distraction. It's a distraction. So I can empathize with those who go through this now, because now I get it. And I see how easy it is to gain weight. I mean, look, you can, next thing you know, it's like you see some people and it's like, dang, this person is 200 pounds, and the next thing 300 pounds, 400 pounds. And weight just has a way of creeping up on you. So I want you to address that. When food becomes a friend, becomes entertainment, it's filling a void and a comfort and connection.
Yeah, and again, just to sort of bring bring God into this, just a tad bit. It's like so much of what we are suffering, or everything that we are suffering, really goes back to like the first 3 books of Genesis. What happened in Genesis chapter 3 when Adam and Eve sinned? Notice what took place. The moment they sinned, they they recognized that they were naked, right? Um, they, as a result of sin, what their perspective, their point of view, their relationship with God severed, in the sense now that they no longer thought of God as loving, but they thought of God as someone to be feared, someone that is out to get them. Um, because notice that when God came to the garden, which he probably did every day, right? From Genesis chapter 1 and 2, once he made Adam and Eve, on this particular day, God knew what they did. And what, if you notice, what God is coming to them to restore the relationship that they fractured. But because of sin, they now hear God coming, and they knew that God always came to them, and they always had
They
option, but
didn't want to face him because they were naked.
and they were ashamed.
Yeah, because
And
they
they
were naked.
feared him. So shame and fear and guilt is what is causing so much, and all of what is taking place in our lives. So this person who is having this unhealthy relationship with food is as a result of not having a healthy relationship with God. And so they're trying to fill this void that they have, this separation from God, making food out to be their God. And it can't do what only God.
I think that's a bit of a swing to, personally, I can tell you, like, when I eat or when whatever it is, I've never seen it like as a God. It's just as
I
a,
know,
like
but
it's like self-medicating. I'll put it like,
exactly. But what does it do? You see, you're eating, right? And you eat, and it sends off these endorphins and dopamine, and this satisfaction and pleasure. So you're doing it for a particular response, and so you're getting the response that you should be getting from your spouse or from your child or for some human relationship or with God. But because those things are non-existent, you're getting it from food, right? So it's not intentional. It's not intentional. But you used a word earlier. You said it became a habit.
yes,
And that is the problem. The problem is with this overeating is you're eating in response to a feeling that you have not yet come in touch with. So it just becomes this reflexive, impulsive action. You feel this way: anger, hurt, lonely, and without even thinking, you have this habit now of just putting something in your mouth, because what that does, you eat that sweet stuff, that salty stuff, that crunchy stuff, it triggers something in your brain, and then you feel satisfied. You're like, you feel good. That loneliness has now passed. So now the food has become your friend. And the food can't disappoint you. The food doesn't argue with you. The food does not hurt you, right? So it is safe. So they have a human relationship with food instead of having a human with with their child or their family member. So that's
as you're saying that, I'm here thinking, because a lot of people, when they think of addiction, they associate it with drugs, but people can
right.
also be addicted to
It is.
food.
Yeah.
Food can be, it's addictive.
Yeah.
The ingredients that go into food
Yeah.
now, it's been done intentionally for
Yeah.
people to be addicted
Yeah.
to these foods.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
In the 80s, when they started to change a lot of these ingredients, they talked about, that's when diabetes, obesity, all of this
Just
stuff,
went out. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, went out of control because
Yeah.
of these addictive ingredients. So
Ingredients.
at
Yep.
the end of the day, like a person that is addicted to food is an addict. It's
Mhm.
just like a person that
Yeah.
is on drugs.
And I've watched so many podcasts where people say that the most addictive substance is actually legal, and it is
Yes.
sugar.
Sugar, it's
You know,
addictive.
uh,
Sugar is, I'll put it like this. I have done it several times throughout my life, so I can tell you the experience. When
mhm.
you decide, like if you're taking in a lot of sugar and you decide
Yeah,
I'm cutting out sugar and I'm going cold
yeah,
turkey, I
yeah.
promise you, you're gonna go through
Trust me.
withdrawals,
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
like the person
I've
that's
done,
coming up,
you know,
right? You know
yeah,
how
yeah.
it's
I've done a
the
fast,
headaches, the
fasting from
miserable.
sugar.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's the
it's
most
rough.
miserable thing. It's the most
Very. Yeah,
miserable. I'm
yeah,
telling you, it is rough. It is
yeah.
rough.
I challenge anybody who has never done this. Do
Do it.
start small. Do do a 24-hour fast from bread and see how quickly your life turns upside down. And then do it for 3 days and go for 7 days. Now, say you're going to fast from bread, you're going to fast from pastries and sugar. Um, you can have natural sugars that's in a fruit, but do a fast where you're not adding any additional sugar
It's
to
rough.
whatever you're eating, and see what happens to you. It's very
you
addictive. It's
you will
very
go through
rough.
you're gonna go through the withdrawal
Yeah,
symptoms, and
yeah,
it is very, very, very
yeah,
unpleasant, you
yeah.
know. So now let's talk about eating when we are not hungry,
Hmm.
and I know that, one thing I noticed coming to this country,
Hmm.
it's like I remember the first time going to one of those buffet restaurants and just seeing the ridiculous amount of food. And I was shocked at how much
Yeah,
people ate.
yeah,
I
yeah.
remember growing up as a child, if
Hmm.
when my mom cooked, like if
Hmm.
she did chicken or something, you would get maybe one piece of chicken and that
Right.
was it. But
Yeah,
you were
yeah,
glad for that,
yeah,
It
yeah.
was like when I saw how people ate in this country, it was
Hmm.
very,
The
very
abundance of
shocking to
food.
me.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was very shocked by that. So
yeah,
it's like if you had this humongous breakfast and then you really can't be hungry. That's just in my
yeah,
opinion. I
yeah.
remember before going to school, my mom would make porridge. We have
Hmm.
that bowl of porridge, and you
Hmm.
know, that really kept you full.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
about the foods we ate growing up. So
yeah,
let's talk about eating when we are not hungry, because
yeah.
after a while, our minds are trained to, oh, it's just time to eat something. When there's really no hunger, there's no need for it.
There's right, right. And that goes to the answering that first question, like defining what is stress eating. Um, it's eating um, in response to an emotion, to a feeling, to a thought, um, you know, and not in response to hunger. So the person that is eating uh, continually, just you know, just eating really,
Yes.
um, it causes. I mean, not only are you damaging your health, um, but the type of food that you're eating tends to be the very limiting in a sense. So the person isn't eating a wide variety of food, corn and broccoli and sweet potato and kale. They're not overeating across the board on those things, right? It tends to be on items that are unhealthy. So there's a lot of danger in this particular practice.
Hmm.
So uh, it really goes back to having good friends that can be honest, so that you can start that process of journaling and identifying what those triggers are. Because getting, being an impulsive eater is extremely dangerous, because it's just a vicious cycle. Because the thing that you're trying to soothe is just going to reoccur within half an hour or hour, as soon as the insulin level goes down. What happens is, instead of the insulin level going down, triggering to your brain that you're full and that you shouldn't eat anymore, what it's going to do is trigger to say, oh, I need to get it back up high, because when it's high, I feel happy. So now you're in this constant cycle of high insulin in your bloodstream, which of course then leads to all kind of chronic diseases, diabetes and stroke and high cholesterol and hypertension, and it just goes on.
Yeah. 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 I think you have to be very intentional on this journey, but at the same time, I think every individual has to come to that moment for themselves,
Right. Yeah.
because I think like trying to shame a person, trying
Mhm.
to,
Yeah.
it's not going to do any
Yeah.
good. But
Yeah.
like at the end of the day, like I can tell you for myself, I know I need to
Mhm.
lose weight. I
Yeah.
know I need to stop eating certain
Mhm.
things. So it's like it's a journey. It's
Yeah. It is. Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
it's not the
Yeah.
easiest thing. And like I said, especially when it comes to sugar.
Yeah.
When it comes to like chips, things like that, I don't have to have them.
Mhm.
Ice cream is something I don't have to have. Honestly,
Mhm.
I don't mind it, but I don't
Mhm.
have to have it.
Yeah.
But like I
Yeah.
said, cake, cookies,
Yeah.
candy, that's been my struggle. So
Yeah.
now let's talk about habits that may be helpful. I can tell you from past experience,
Mhm.
working out,
Mhm.
journaling,
Yeah.
those were things that were very helpful. Talking about it,
Right.
not holding it in. Those are things that helped me in the past and things that are
Mhm.
helping me now. So,
Right.
in your opinion, what are some of the activities that may be helpful?
The sun, sh- shining light on the issue is always a good first step.
Yes.
Sunlight just has a way of freeing you and liberating you. So
Yes.
that shame, so you can come out of that closet and remove the shame. Okay, yes, I'm overweight. Yes, I overeat. Okay, but guess what? God still loves me. So
Yeah.
if you can make that first connection, okay, God still loves me. God still went on the cross for me. Me, 300 pounds. God still went on the cross for me. I am loved. Digesting words that will motivate you, and this is why I like to bring someone. I won't start with it, but I would, on the journey of being that person, of being a friend to that person. um, I would eventually like and bring in the word of God, because um, being anchored in the word of God, as opposed to just meditating blindly, aimlessly, but you can meditate on the word of God, which then causes that change in you. It causes you to now feel loved, and that's why just plain meditation according to the world, I don't subscribe to. But meditating on the word of God has a more honest and permanent and truth to that. So I would encourage someone to find a scripture. You don't have to memorize the entire Bible. You just need to just find one thing, right? So I know we did a podcast on like Psalms 91, right?
Yes. Yes.
So again, from then I read it every now and then, more often, more frequently, and I think Psalms 91 verses 9 and 10, it says, if you make overeating your refuge and make partying your dwelling, then no harm will come to you. I don't think that's what it says, but it says if you make the Lord your refuge and you make the Most High your dwelling place, then no harm will come to you. So when you anchor yourself in the Word and you anchor yourself in God's promises, His promises are true. It will never fail. But when you take God out of the equation and you put in eating as your refuge, you are bound to fail. So it's simple as that. You have to get the help, and I encourage medical healthcare providers. If you have family members that can speak and help you, fine. But you have to remove the shame and be able to get out there. Because I remember Bree, like 2016, because of my vision, my poor vision, I just I didn't want to go outside and walk, right? And I said, Andrew, there's a gym right there in the clubhouse. There is a trail right there in your community. Get up and go and exercise. What you're doing is not helping. And I just decided one day to just pray and just say, I'm going to take God at His word and just go out there and just start walking. And that walking eventually led to me going into the gym, because I would walk just a few blocks and then turn back. And then that turned into walking the entire community. And then me doing it several laps and doing 3-4 miles. And I would walk by the clubhouse and I would not go into the gym because I'm like, how am I going to see to do whatever inside there? And I remember the first day I decided to go to the gym. Mm-hmm. Well, of course, the devil was busy. He was there waiting. And Bree, guess what happened? So I'm going there. I know I needed it. I have the club key, but I've never used it. So I don't know how to navigate all of this. And I am saying, okay, Lord, it's me and you. And I just want to tell somebody, not because you're walking with the Lord means that every step is going to be perfectly aligned and that nothing bad, as you would consider it, will happen to you, right? Because something bad may happen to you, or something that you didn't expect may happen to you, but it doesn't mean that God is not with you, yes. Right? He's going to use those bad situations to work for you, right? And so I went and I couldn't enter the clubhouse because I didn't know how to use the card. So now I gave up and I'm walking away. And so as I walked a couple of steps and I turned around, here comes a community, a neighbor, an elderly white lady. So I said, okay, I'm going to ask her because clearly she's going there. So I created enough space, right? And I said, hi, excuse me, could you assist me to use my club key to enter? And immediately she got startled and she went to the ground to clearly look for something to arm herself. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm like, this cannot be happening to me. You know what I mean? But, I backed away. I gave her sufficient space to know that nothing bad was going to happen here. I'm just asking for help. And she came, we spoke and whatever. And because I stood in that moment and I was praying, and I didn't allow the devil to, take charge of the situation. From that day, Bree, I've been going to the gym, and my weight, how I feel about myself, everything has changed. So I say all of that really, Bree, to just encourage somebody who is going through this, who is struggling with overeating, that it's going to be a journey. It's not going to be a one quick fix. Um, it's going to be a journey, but with God, you will have success.
And it taught you to lean on God, right? It taught you to
Right.
trust Him.
Yes.
And there's what I'm learning is there's nothing that's too small to ask Him for.
Ah,
Nothing too
yeah.
small,
Even
nothing
those,
too big.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not, yeah. And it's not, nothing too small. And also to know that the journey has these detours and these roadblocks and potholes and things, but um, they're all there to strengthen your faith. Because now, me looking back at that, I'm saying, oh, you know what? God helped me in that situation, so God will help me in this new situation that
Yes.
that's in front of me. So it's really odd and it's really weird, but again, it's one of those lies that the devil tell, that see, you studied for the test, you fail, it means that God doesn't love you. No, not
That's
because you
true.
fail doesn't mean that God doesn't exist. It doesn't mean that God doesn't love you. God still has a plan for you. You, so I just need to just make those points clear to that new believer, that uh, walk with the Lord. Taste and
Not
see that the
even
Lord
for
is good.
just the new believer. You have some people who have been in the faith for a long time,
Yeah,
but life sometimes knocks them down, and it's so easy to lose faith along the way. And I
right.
think we all need that reminder sometimes.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about feeling judged and misunderstood. I think that's a horrible thing
Mm,
to go through. And I would
yeah.
hate to know that I did that to someone, or I
Right.
wasn't helpful to a person that was going through that process.
Right.
So let's
Right.
talk about that, Andrew, feeling judged and misunderstood.
Right. Yeah. Because like I said, I remember when um, I think at a time I had so I was working on campus in a math lab, and I remember I I I just I just remembered, feeling the stares, the looks, the glances, like is that really Andrew? Like how did he get that way? You know, um, and a lot of it is possibly intrusive thoughts. So yes, you feel judged, but there's this there are some negative thoughts that we keep recycling in our own heads,
Yes.
the lies that we keep telling ourselves still, that really cause us then to even eat more, because these thoughts, we're telling ourselves we are not good, and then we're telling ourselves that people are looking at us, so we're not imposing on them thoughts that probably they aren't even generated there, but we think that people are looking at our overweight, right? Which then just makes us eat more. But 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 in the event that you're being judged, really, again, we spoke about this. We just have to be much more sensitive, really, because
Yes.
like in my case, I ate to be overweight, but part of it was the medication that I was taking
Yes.
that
You
was
couldn't help
driving me
that.
to eat. And part of the fact is that it also allowed me to keep this water weight. So not all of it was true what I was eating, but you know, So yes, it can be very, very painful because people just don't know the truth sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
We spoke about food addiction earlier. I think one of the things that's very helpful in that area is to read labels. I
Mhm.
got in the habit of reading the labels on everything I buy to know
Right.
what's in it,
Yeah.
because I think if you start to pay attention to how much sugar is in
Hmm.
the how much sodium, how
Right.
much,
Yeah.
cholesterol, and then,
Hmm.
because I think the more educated we are on the foods that we're taking in, I
Hmm.
think it makes such a difference.
Right.
Because I will say that sometimes when I look at the sugar content of certain items, it
Right.
will convince me, don't even go there because that's just way too much
Wait.
sugar,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
or looking at the sodium content. So I
Right.
think that's something to take into consideration. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah. And definitely, definitely have annual visits, your medical appointment. Um, don't be so overweight and think so lowly of yourself that you don't even want to go to your scheduled medical appointment, because then now you're shutting yourself off from even getting medical help. So do your blood work, speak to them, understand your levels. Is 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 um, is your salt, is your sodium level an issue? Is your A1C an issue? So that you can then make smart choices. You can, like you said, you can now start reading the labels, so that if it is that you're supposed to be cutting back on sugar, you can be cognizant of that. Or is it salt? Is it red meat? Is it whatever the case is? But you have to know um, your medical history. You have to work with your um, physician to help you to combat this particular issue.
Yes. Now let's talk about spiritual food. I
Mm,
think spiritual food is like so important. You
mm,
know, it's I do two devotions each day, and it
okay.
really it's made a difference in my life. I used
Mm,
to just do one in the morning, but I started doing one in the afternoon. Sometimes I do it in the evening.
mm-hmm.
It's made such a difference
A big
in
difference.
my life, and
Yeah.
it's helped me to face the things I've had to deal with. But I have found that, of course, human interaction is important.
Yeah.
But I have found that when I have certain issues, I would rather take it to God,
Oh yeah.
because I
Yeah.
don't feel I don't feel that harsh judgment. I
Mm-hmm.
don't feel that condemnation that I may feel
Right.
for my fellow human being. But
Right.
I've also found that you know, as I get deeper into the word, I have a
Mm-hmm.
better understanding of what God is about.
Mm-hmm.
I have a better understanding of, what, when I'm beating myself up mentally, when I'm telling myself all these negative things about
Yeah.
myself,
Yeah.
that's the voice of the enemy. And
Right.
I'm learning, don't listen to that voice. You have to
Right.
listen for the voice of God. Trust what he's telling you about yourself. I had to learn to see myself the way God sees me,
Amen.
as a valuable human being,
Yeah.
not defined by weight or anything else that the world may be looking at.
Right.
That
Right.
got me to a point where now, as you know that God loves you and you're seeing evidence of it, you're feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it gets you to the point, like I'm looking at First Corinthians 6:20, and that's one of the verses you sent to me, where you were
Uh-huh.
bought with a price. So
Right.
glorify God in your body. It
Right.
makes you stop and really think. You know what?
Mm-hmm.
This body is my temple. It's my gift from God. You know,
Right.
if I'm doing certain things to abuse it, then I'm not showing the gratitude for the gift. So
Exactly.
spiritual
Yeah.
food, I think, is important. I believe in that mind, body, spirit connection. So
Right.
I do believe spiritual food is definitely a must. What is
Right.
your take on that?
Yeah. I like that verse you read there, and there was something that you shared with me last week, or yeah, yeah. Um, uh, I the young lady said in the video,
Hmm.
she said, food. Let me see if I can remember what she said. Food cannot fix what God alone can heal.
True.
Right? Um, and I thought that was just genius right there. Food cannot fix what God alone can heal. And she so one of the points she mentioned was to every time you sit to eat, you should pray, right? You should exercise faith every time. So instead of eating, she's asking you to exercise faith, not that you're going to um, starve yourself or you're trying to replace faith with food, but the point she's trying to make is ask yourself in that moment where you're about to eat, am I eating right now, this second? Am I eating because I'm actually hungry, or am I eating in response to a feeling? Right? And pray about that and exercise faith, as you're saying. Use those Bible verses that will help you to recognize that you are more than food. You are more than your weight, right? You are more than being rejected by a friend or a lover. You are
Yes.
more than that. You are a child of God. And what that means is the world to God. And as you build up that confidence, then um, that will then translate to you now start taking better care of yourself, because you are like,
Yes.
okay, God loves me. So I'm going to give God my best, right? And my best doesn't have to be um, a size two, right? It doesn't have to be some check box that, like, some based on the chart of what the world says uh,
Yes.
it should be. But you're going to live your healthiest, best life, whatever that ends up being, for God. So the focus is God and not how I look. And
Yes.
the closer you get to that, the better your relationship um, with God is going to be. The
Yes.
better your relationship with people. You're now going to be more open to have human connections instead of isolating yourself. Because now you feel confident, and now you can go out there and have these conversations and relationships with people, as opposed to isolating yourself, because that's not healthy. God made us to be relational, right? The first thing when he made Adam, he looked at him and said, okay, uh, he needs a mate. Yes, he made him, and it was perfect, it was good, but the recognition was that he needed a companion. So we all need to really be our best selves. We need to have that relationship that God the Father and the Son has, and the only way we can experience that relationship is through the relationship between a man and a woman. And that's what God wants with us, despite our weight.
Right.
Despite our height, our education. God wants us to have good, fruitful relationships.
Let's talk about facing the pain in order to heal.
Mm.
You know, I'm learning because I'm one that used to bury my head in the sand
Right,
over this, trying to pretend, oh, everything is okay when
right,
it's not.
yeah,
I
yeah,
find that the quicker we face up to what we're going through, I
Yeah,
think we heal faster
we heal faster.
instead of
It's so
dragging
difficult,
out
Ray.
the process for years and years. It's sad because
It
many
is
of
so
us
difficult.
are stuck for years,
Yeah,
but it's like I thank God for therapy because
yeah,
it helped me to face up to a lot of things that I didn't want to deal with. I'm nowhere close to where I want to be,
yeah.
but at least I think having that understanding,
But
at
you're on
least
the
I'm on
journey.
the journey.
Yeah,
Exactly. I'm on the journey. I've taken
right.
that first step.
Exactly.
So it's like facing the pain. I mean, I had to learn, one of my biggest things was learning not to be judgmental
Right.
because I believe in my heart that maybe at some point my children felt judged by me,
Mhm.
because it's like every generation thinks that their generation was the best. We didn't do this when we were
Right.
kids, and we didn't
Yeah.
when we probably did worse. But
Right.
that sort of thing. I'm learning not to be judgmental.
Mhm.
I'm learning to not try to control life or control other people. I had to
Mhm. Mhm.
learn to let go of a lot of things.
Right. Yeah.
Listen, let go and let God. And
Yeah.
that's something I'm really trying to live by. And I think that is helping me because it's like now I'm at least willing to have the dialogue with myself. You shouldn't be eating so much candy. It's time for you to stop eating so late, little things
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
So, what's your
Yeah.
take on facing the pain in order to heal?
Yeah. Again, one of those uh, lies that we just take as truth, from the devil. Um, we just think um, that that there's no way out. We think that whatever we're going through is unique to us, and we isolate ourselves. We think nobody cares. There's no help for us. God has abandoned. If He made us, He then abandoned us. You know, so we get all these intrusive thoughts, and if we but took 5 seconds to just stop, breathe. I'm telling you, I had to experience that for myself, where I just had to just pray and say, just take the walk, just make it to the block, and just come back. And you realize that, oh my goodness, I didn't die. I didn't die, breathe. So instead of putting um, that pretzel in your mouth, instead of putting that donut in your mouth, just stop. And I know it's hard, and you are going to fail, but failure does not make you a failure. um, you ate the candy, whatever it is, you drank the drink, the alcohol, um, whatever that vice is. But just know that you can get up and you can start the process over with God. God, like you mentioned in Romans 8:1, there is no condemnation in God. Okay, so just stop, take the 5 seconds, ask yourself, do I really want to do this?
And you know what? I think look, because I'm never going to tell a person never eat a donut again, never eat
Right,
another slice of cake or whatever. I think it's getting to that point of doing it in moderation.
right,
As in the 8 laws of health, we talk about temperance.
right,
Being able to knowing when it's time to say no,
right.
because it's like at the end of the day, we're all human. We may
Mhm,
crave certain things, but it's
mhm.
like when it becomes a bad habit, that's
Right.
what we have to be careful of. Now, let me ask you this, Andrew. To me, at the end of the day, sin is sin.
Right.
And we love to throw that word around in in Christianity. But
Mhm.
at the end of the day, you know, some people will say, okay, yeah, I may be addicted to food, but I'm not addicted to drugs. I'm not
Mhm.
addicted to this. So they think I'm not as
Not
bad.
as bad as the other
You know
person.
what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, we all fall short, right?
Exactly.
So, what's
Yeah.
your opinion on that?
Definitely. I mean, we, in the church, they would talk about, you know, okay, let's put it this way. Someone will get up and testify that, oh, I had an anger problem when I was younger. Um, you know, and they would do that because it is an acceptable sin,
Yeah.
right? But nobody's going to get up and say, "Oh, I had a prostitution problem when I was younger." Oh, I I had a masturbation problem, right?
Hmm.
Nobody's going to get up and say that because that is not acceptable, right?
Right.
But we all
We all fall short.
we all fall short in some category or the other.
Yes.
And instead of judging another person because society says that those sins are more, you know um, whatever the word is, no, you have to recognize that your sin, your lying and cheating, your anger, your inability to exercise self control, that um, placed Jesus on the cross just as much as the the person that committed adultery and murder.
At the end of the day,
Yeah,
sin is sin. So, I would
sin is sin.
say whatever your struggle is, I just think we just have to uplift each other and
Yeah,
encourage each other and stop calling out each other for whatever sin that we feel that they're committing. But,
right.
Andrew, I really appreciate you doing this topic tonight. And I'd like to ask you, what are your closing thoughts for tonight?
Wow. So I would just say, stop, pray, have a heart to heart discussion with yourself and with God. Um, as do I need to eat this thing at this moment? Am I eating this because I'm hungry, or is this in a response to some particular trigger?
And let me
And
ask you this, Andrew, not cutting you off, but how about because some things we eat it simply for the pleasure of it? Like think
yeah,
about a
yeah,
mango. Are you
yeah.
eating a mango because you're
But
hungry or just for
yeah,
the pleasure of
but the
eating that
person that is
mango?
overeating isn't eating
Yeah,
mango.
right.
You
Well,
know what I
I don't
mean?
know what they're
Yeah.
gonna eat because
Yeah.
different strokes for different folks. People like different things, but is
Well,
it okay to eat something just for the pleasure of it?
of course, of
Okay.
course. But then, we're not talking about just eating something just for the pleasure of it, but we're talking about a particular issue where,
No, we're
you're,
talking
yeah,
about emotional eating, but I
emotional
don't
eating.
want anyone to think like, look, it's okay to eat. We all have to eat. And
Yeah,
sometimes you eat something like, listen, when I eat the candy bars, I
yeah,
eat them because I like the taste of them. Do I need to eat them every day? No.
right,
That you get what I'm saying.
right. But again, because now you are now conscious. So the idea of eating, one of the things that we really didn't get into really, but in that 5 seconds where you're pausing and breathing and having a heart-to-heart discussion, um, understand understand feeling what that feeling is telling you. Am
Yes.
I eating because of some need, some innate need that we all have, or am I eating because of some other reason? So the message, the thoughts that are associated
Yeah.
with this feeling, if we just pause and just took a moment to do an inventory and to understand what is this message trying to tell me, as opposed to putting a band-aid on it and just eating out of habit or eating out of impulse, because that's when it becomes a problem. when
Yes.
eating is impulsive, when there's no thought and
You
you're just
become
shoving
obsessed
it.
with it. You're just
Right.
obsessed with it. Yes.
Exactly. So understanding the feelings will give you clarity and will give you freedom. That
Yes.
yeah
And I like the word freedom.
yeah
Yes,
yeah
definitely.
yeah.
Andrew, thank you so much. And I'd like to thank all of those who tuned in. If you watch the replay and you'd like to post a question or a comment, please feel free to do so. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a blessed week. Andrew, once again, thank you so much.